Okay. All right, let me get the attendance going. Okay, the attendance is running. Please sign in. Okay, we'll start in one more moment. And I apologize, the live stream is not working right now. I'm recording it on my local memory card, so I'll upload it later, but there's no live stream on YouTube, so I apologize. It doesn't always work. All right, I think we have 56, 57, yeah, we have just about everyone. Any questions before we get started? We'll go over the midterm, don't worry, at some length, but any questions before we get started in general? Okay. All right, then I'll begin. I haven't gotten your papers yet, and I apologize. I've requested them several times, and they didn't send to me yet, so I'm sorry. I tried, but I don't have them. So I haven't even looked at them yet. I wish I had, because that would be a little bit more useful, but I didn't get them. So I did the best I could in that one. I think most of you managed okay with the exam soft. I'm really tempted next year, honestly, to just let people type it in Word and email it to me. I think the exam soft creates so much more headaches than it's actually worth. And because I don't count it, the blind grading doesn't really matter. Like, I think it just creates complexities that don't really matter. I know that doesn't help you at all because you had to suffer through it. But it's just more work for me. The way it usually works is you have to upload the file in advance. You have to have it available for download at a certain time after midnight. It's no longer available, so if you start the exam 5 minutes late, you can't download it. There's just so many things that I think next year I'll just email people the exam the morning of and say, okay, do it. And you know, you're on the honor system anyway, because I don't have the stalking software. I'm sorry, the tracking software enabled. I haven't. There was actually a piece in the Times about this where people did worse on the exam when they thought they were being monitored by the software. It's actually, I think it actually harms you in ways that aren't quite well appreciated. So my general position is it's hard to cheat on my exam unless you just have someone calling you with answers and telling you what to write. And even then, it's pretty tricky. So I'll probably just do Word next year, but you're stuck with it. Any questions on the administration? Did anyone have any weird issues or things that popped up that I should tell the school about that just maybe aren't obvious to me? No? That's good. All right. Well, then I promise you I will look at the papers when they come in. The next thing I want to talk about is the exam reviews. And here I want your input. By way of background, I used to... Oh, Moises, go ahead. I see your hands up.
I heard someone trying to say something.
I'm sorry? Oh, is that Marissa?
Yeah. It was nice to be able to print out all the exams, like the questions, and then, because you said it was going to be one of the old midterms.
Yeah. And
then be able to, actually have a physical copy of it. I know it's kind of hard for the final, but it was really nice. Yeah,
I'm grateful that was helpful to you. There's no way I can do it for the final, I'm sorry. There's... The school has certain, expectations, and one of them is that you can't access your printer. I can't get around that one. I get it. If it's any consolation, on the virtual bar exam your colleagues just took, they couldn't print out either. They had just virtual answers. So that's the world we're living in. But I hear you, Marissa. I get it. For some people, the paper really matters. I'm sorry. I want to talk, though, for a few minutes about the exam review. And let me give you a little background. In years past, what I would do, it was not pleasant, but I would do it, is I would have every single student I had sign up for a slot to meet with me, where I'd go over their midterm. It was really time consuming. I would come to the college on weekends from Saturday morning from, say, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. I'd be there for 12 hours straight. And I'd do that for maybe 3, maybe 4 weekends. So it'd take almost a month to do. What made it even more complex is that, as you might imagine, students didn't keep their appointments. So I'm sitting there on Saturday with a slot, say, at 9:30 a.m., and then no one's there. And they say, oh, Professor Blackman, I forgot, can I come later? I'm like, yeah, whatever, come later. And the person at 2 p.m. had to wait 30 minutes for the 9 a.m. person who was late. And it became unmanageable. I couldn't do it anymore. I really enjoyed it. I got to know everyone in the class very well, but I couldn't do it. It was just too many hours, and it wasn't efficient. So I stopped doing it. And I said to you last semester, you can all come to me to talk about your midterms. Optional. And again, most people didn't. The overwhelming majority of you never came to see me. I'm not blaming, I'm just saying it didn't happen. This semester, because we're on Zoom, I want to do something in between, where I want you all to come meet with me at least once, but I don't want to have it stacked for 12 hours in Zoom, because that's just not feasible. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do, I'm not sure exactly how, is to set certain times on nights and weekends where I'll have Zoom on. And if you stop by, there'll be a queue, and you can wait in the queue. You don't have to make an appointment. The reason why is people don't keep their appointments. And if I open a slot for you, don't show there, then I'm wasting my time and your classmates' time. So queuing it is. So I think what I'm tentatively inclined to do is just set certain slots for weekends and evenings. I know a lot of you are night owls. I am. I get your emails at 2 in the morning. I know you're awake. I know you are. So I'm awake also. I have young kids, and nighttime is quiet time. So I'll figure out, I don't know exactly when, certain slots for nights and weekends. You can take advantage of them or not. It's your call. I would really strongly encourage you to. But I want you to meet with me at least once a semester. If it's not a midterm review, it's something else. I'll try it for a week or two. If I find that people aren't using it, then I'll stop doing it, because it's not worth my time to sit there just waiting indefinitely. But that's what I'd like to do. I think the midterm reviews are most useful not to give you your points, which is, how many points I get here? That's not a useful question. The reason why the midterm reviews are useful is to figure out how you're approaching the exam, and how you're thinking about writing your answer, and how do you prepare it, how do you outline it, right? How did you approach it, right? What's your thought process? That is so much more important than, did I get a 7 this one, or did I get an 8? Those questions are not very important. I can give you a rough grade. Like, you got about a B, or maybe you got a C, or maybe you got an A-. I can give you in the ballpark. It's hard for me to give you an exact score, because the exact score is premised on a curve, and curves only work if students take it seriously. Most students don't take the midterm seriously. They don't. So it's hard to give an actual grade, but I can give you a ballpark of where you would be. And I think that's a useful number for you, because generally speaking, the midterm scores are the final scores. I don't mean to be fatalistic, but it's true. If you look at most semesters, where people fall on the midterm is where they fall in the final. It's not always. People go up, people go down, but it's a good indication. That's why we give it. I'll try to start these midterm reviews, I think, next week, after I've had a chance to actually look at your papers, because I haven't gotten them yet. I'm sorry. And then I'll come back with time slots. What do you think about that approach? I don't know. There's no good way of doing it, because I can't just sit in my office for Zoom for an actual office, so we have to do it online. And the time slots are just so hard to manage. Anyone have any thoughts? I haven't made my mind up on this. I'm still giving it thought, and I'll ask my common law students as well what they think. Any thoughts on this? Yeah, Moises, go ahead.
I like the idea. It saves you time too. It doesn't waste your time. But for us too, how would you queue it? Would it be here in Zoom and it would let us know?
Well, when you're in Zoom, you're sorted based on the time you enter the queue. So, let's say open the queue at 9 a.m. If you're the first one in there, you're number one. If you're number two, you're number two. It's kind of like, registering for classes, like when the semester starts. First come, first serve. When you're in Zoom, I can send a message to the waiting room saying you are, here's the order, Moises number one, and Nancy's number two, and Marissa's number three, whatever it happens to be. That's basically how it would work. So the upshot, and I think the way to make this actually work realistically, is just you can just walk away from your computer. And I'd be like, Moises, come here, and then you'll hear my voice, the voice of God. No, just kidding. You hear this voice, this booming voice from beyond, and then you walk over to your computer, and that'll be fine. In other words, you don't need to sit in front of a computer for 4 hours straight. Just be sure you can hear it, and if for whatever reason you don't come by, I'll put you back in the queue, and then you can come in later. The reason why I don't want to do appointment slots, this is not trying to be mean, is that students don't keep their appointments. They just don't. And I would just sit there and have like an hour block with no one in my room. And then after lunchtime, everyone would just flood in. I think it'll be even worse on Zoom because people aren't going to be able to sort of structure their day. So that's the way. And look, I might want to take a break. And I'll say, okay, 30 minutes, just a queue will be there for 30 minutes. I'll go take a lunch break. Okay. All right. Other thoughts? Nancy, I thought I saw your hand up before, but maybe it was a phantom hand.
Yeah, no, I think I decided I'll wait for my meeting to ask that question.
Okay. You can do that. All right. Okay. Anything else on your mind? All right. Alrighty. Well, let me start then by pulling up the exam. And I'm sorry, screen sharing. I hate it, but it actually works for today's session. Okie dokie. All right. So this was an exam of mine from a couple years ago. I actually picked this one because our timing this semester is off. Usually by the midterm, I finished covenants and we just started them. It's just this semester, everything's stretched out. So I had to pick this midterm because there were no covenant questions on it. But usually there are. So if you looked at their midterms, there were lots of covenant questions and you probably don't know how to answer them yet because we haven't finished the topic. Yeah, this semester, unfortunately, I'm covering less stuff. I'm covering it more slowly. That's just our Zoom world with fewer minutes in the class time. So that's why I gave it. You had 90 minutes. You had a 1,000 word limit. Can someone who figured out how to do the word count please raise your hand and share it with us? The software changes every year, and my instructions may not be still accurate. Anthony, you want to just raise your hand? Yeah, see your hands up?
Yeah, you just click. There's going to be like a little, almost little document icon right next to the number or the letter count. If you click that, it brings up the word count and like 6 other things in a little text box.
Okay, all right. So you're going to see a character count, right? The character count's how many letters you have, right? And there's a document icon that says word count, Anthony?
It's just a little icon and it looks like squiggly lines on a piece of paper. You click that, it pops up a little box with the text that has like the word count and everything else in it.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Appreciate that. Everyone hear what he said? My instructions, the software changes from year to year, so it used to be under tools, and now I guess it's not. It's surprisingly hard for me to test it because the version I have is different than the version you have. It's just like a teacher version. Anyway, so that's the word count. You have 90 minutes to write 1,000 words. Okay. Oh, hold on. There's a chat. When I'm in screen share mode, my chat doesn't actually appear. Oh, thank you, Elias. Elias put in a link to illustrate how to do the word count. Thank you, Elias, for that. All right. So let's just think this through here. You all have 90 minutes for roughly 1,000 words, right? 90 minutes for about 1,000 words. Okay. You have 5 questions for 1,000 words. That should tell you that you should be writing roughly, not exactly, roughly 200 words for each of the 5 parts, right? It's not a good idea to front load, to write a lot for question number 1, because then you get to question 5 and you're out of space, and you have to start deleting stuff. It's not a smart way of writing the exam. Okay. It's also a good idea to spend roughly the same amount of time per question. My math, which is maybe different than yours, means maybe 10 to 12 minutes per question. If you find yourself not finishing, and maybe that's what happened to you last week, that means you need to adjust your time. And think of it like you're running a race with different laps, right? You want to get each lap of the race to be roughly the same time. If you take too much time for the first lap, you won't finish the last lap on time. So my experience with a 90-minute exam, maybe 15 minutes to read the question, and then maybe 10 or 12 minutes for each of the 5 parts for writing. That will leave you with maybe 10 minutes left over to check your work. Good if you have time to check over. If you don't, then you gotta submit whatever you have. Time's up, time's up. But you should learn to discipline yourself to use roughly the same amount of words and the same amount of minutes per question. Don't front load it. Nancy, go ahead.
I don't remember this from last semester. How much do you care about the completeness of our sentences? As long as the whole idea is there and it's intelligible? I remember economy of words was really hard last semester.
You should be writing full sentences. Please. It's law school.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at... I don't expect it to be, as polished as a legal writing memo, but I don't want bullets. I want sentences.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at the A+ answers from year after year, they're writing sentences, and that's what I expect. Let me just tell you something. Do you know how many... Okay, so for your final exam, you have to write 2,000 words, right? Do you know how many words Supreme Court amicus brief is? 6,000. A Supreme Court brief is 6,000 words. You have 2,000. Really, this is nothing to complain about. Word counts will be plaguing you your entire career. Your entire career of word counts. This is not stringent, right? If you're having trouble writing 1,000 words and getting your answer across, then you're not focused, right? Then you the reason why you're all over the place is because you're all over the place. The word count forces you to think about what the correct answer is and not just dumping everything you know. That's why it's there. It focuses you. It guides you to the right answer. If I say there's no word count, you will write everything you know about covenants. You write everything you know about adverse possession, praying that you stepped in the right answer. It's called, I've seen it called the spaghetti approach, where you take a pot of spaghetti and you throw it at the wall hoping some of it sticks, right? That's not going to work here. All right, again, open book. I don't have the software activated, so I guess there is no proctor, because it's a virtual proctor. But please don't cheat. Don't have your phone open next to you and texting your friend. If we, that is the school, finds out that people are cheating, I think we're going to have mandatory stalking software. So maybe you have a reprieve for this semester. We actually had a discussion of this at a faculty meeting. I think this semester the rule is going to be people have discretion. But if there's thought that there's rampant cheating, then that will go away. And the reason why is, it's unfair to curve you in my section where people are cheating and another section where they're not. You have to understand, if there's 2 property sections, one professor has a stalking software, the other one doesn't, it creates incentives for cheating. Now, I don't think the software actually stops cheating. I don't think it does. This is terrible, but during the bar exam that was just administered last week, not in Texas, but in another state, if you got up to go to the bathroom, you were flagged for cheating. So there was one person actually peed on his seat rather than getting, look, he didn't want to fail the bar. It was a she. I can't remember if it was a guy or a girl, but person didn't want to fail the bar. There was another female student in Illinois, I'm not kidding, who actually went to labor during the exam. And so she wouldn't be flagged for cheating. She actually sat through her contractions taking her exam. Superwoman. I don't know how they do it. I just unfathomable. So the software I think is very bad, but just warning, if you cheat, you're stuck with it. That's just, you get an autonomy. But anyway, so yeah, I'm not going to ask for it. All right, instructions. All right, let's start at the beginning. Always read the instructions first, and that sounds stupid, but so many students don't read them. They just don't read them. The reason why the instructions are helpful is that they tell you what your setup is, right? And for your purposes, you need to know a couple things. Are you in a common law jurisdiction, or are you in a jurisdiction that applies the modern rules? I can ask either one. I do it from time to time. More often than not, common law rules I think are more real. It's not just, what's fair, what's fluffy. I don't care about that stuff. But I'm usually asking common law. I'll also give you information if there's an adverse possession limit, 10 years in this case. That's important. Someone asked me, can we presume it's 5 or 10? No, you can't presume. I will always tell you what your jurisdiction is, and I'll tell you what the limitation period is. And there might be some other stuff I have to tell you. After you read the instructions, I encourage you to jump down and read the questions. Now, I can do the questions a different way. Sometimes I put the questions at the end, and sometimes I scatter them in the middle. I don't know, I can do either one. It depends how I'm writing the question. But you should always just skim the questions first. So that way you know what I'm asking about. It takes only a minute. So question number 1 is something about adverse possession. Okay, so now you know, he's asking about adverse possession. Question number 2, it's about trespassing for walking along Blackacre. Well, that sounds like a prescriptive easement, right? Just by looking at the questions, you can figure out what topics I'm asking about. Okay, question 3, something about a foreclosure sale. Okay, so now I have a mortgage question, right? A bank question. Okay, question number 4, something about rescinding a contract. So that's the contract of sale. Cursed. Okay, so that's Stambovsky, right? Then the question number 5 is what I call the policy question. Something about adverse possession. Okay, so just from looking at the 5 questions in about a minute, you have adverse possession, you have prescription, you have a foreclosure mortgage question, you have some sort of contract of sale question, and then another adverse possession question, right? Without doing any work, what you're asking about. And that can help you with your issue spotting, right? The questions are there to guide you to the right answer. If I was a jerk, I would just say, please discuss all relevant legal issues, right? Go. And, the exam would be an absolute mishmash. And I know people do that. I hated those exams. I hated them so much. They're impossible to grade either because there's no way to compare paper A to paper B. It's so open-ended. So I give you these very precise questions that are trying to guide you to the right answer. I hated those. Discuss all relevant legal issues. I hated those questions so much because I would think of a million issues and it's there. All right. Now I'll go back to the fact pattern. The exam's short. I mean, the fact pattern is about a page? Yeah, barely a page. But there's a lot in there. And it might take you 15 minutes to read a page. I pack a lot of things in a very short space. And as a general rule, my friends, I don't give you useless information. If there's some fact in there, it's there for a reason. Now, it might be there to trick you, right? It might be there to mislead you, but you can't ignore it, right? It's there for a specific reason, right? I'm not just giving you facts. I want to talk about Captain Jack, right? I'm giving you facts to try to get you to the answer, but I might also have a fact that is designed to trick you. So just be very, very careful when you read these fact patterns. Okay, so let's start. As a general matter, I only give you years when there's some sort of statute of limitation question. If there's no statute of limitation, I don't really give you years, at least not in this class. So the years are important for your limitation period, which is 10 years. Keep in mind that I don't need to give you the facts in chronological order. Very often I'll give you the future, then I'll go to the past. I can jump around a bit. So make sure when you're doing your sort of mini outline for the exam, you put up a little timeline for these sorts of questions. All right, so we learned that in the year 1700, Jack is a pirate. He washes ashore on the island of Blackacre. How creative, Blackacre, right? Following a storm. Stranded, Jack realizes there's no one else on the deserted island. Now, this is not Property 1. I'm not asking about discovery of islands. It's not Johnson v. McIntosh. We're in a different class. That's not what I'm asking you about. Frantically, Jack begins digging in the sand to look for sources of water. Again, I'm not asking about found property. That was a Property 1 issue. He finds a chest in the sand with 100 gold coins. Okay. He removes the chest and then he buries it on the other side of Blackacre. Right, so this is not an obvious issue, but it's an issue about property that was potentially stolen. Right? Usually people bury treasure because it's stolen. And when you think about adverse possession, one of the requirements is open and notorious, right? Is having gold buried in a sand open and notorious? I think the answer is no. Right? So at the outset, knowing nothing else, you should recognize that the adverse possession analysis will be affected because the thing was hidden. It was in the sand. It wasn't open. And this should make you think of the George O'Keefe case, the Snyder versus O'Keefe, or is it O'Keefe versus Snyder? Because in that case, you had the paintings, right, that were not on public display. Rather, they were trapped. They were hanging in some guy's house where they couldn't be viewed, and that affects the limitation period, right, of when the period runs. So just from that one paragraph, there's actually a lot going on. Right? And you can have adverse possession of chattels, right, of personal property. It doesn't just have to be land. You can have of gold or of a painting or anything else. All right, with me so far? Okay, so Jack says he buried the gold on the other side of Blackacre. Can Jack claim that he's now adversely possessing the gold if he buried it? I think the answer is no, because it was not open and notorious, right? He cannot claim it through adverse possession. All right, the next paragraph says, Jack sets up camp on the shore. Oh, I'm sorry. Next paragraph. Jack sets up camp along the shoreline, where he can easily fish for food. So soon he discovers a stream, which provides the only source of fresh water for the island. Okay. Every day for the next 5 years, he walks from his camp on the shoreline to the stream, where he fills a bucket of fresh water every day. All right, this is asking about not adverse possession, but prescription. Right? Prescription. And the issue is, can he gain a prescriptive easement for his actions? Well, first off, he's only going there for 5 years. The limitation period is 10, so he will not have the continuity requirement. But the question's a little bit different. There's a fact in there that's important. It says, the stream is the only source of fresh water on the island. Right? If he didn't have this water, he would die of dehydration. So can you claim an easement by necessity? Right? Even if he can't claim a prescriptive easement, can he claim an easement by necessity? And I think even under the common law rule of absolute necessity, this might suffice. If he doesn't have this water, he dies. He's trapped in an island. Right? Now, what easement would he require, though? Is it the easement to walk to the river? Or is it the easement to fill the bucket? Right? I think those are two separate acts. Right? There's a filling of the bucket and walking to the river. I suspect it's probably both. Because the shoreline under the common law is under the public trust doctrine, right? He's able to access the wet sand at least. It's not so clear in access the dry sand. So I think at a minimum, the easement by necessity would be to walk from the wet sand to the stream and then to collect water. I think at a minimum, he can claim easement by necessity there. Yes, Chance, go ahead.
I took issue with some of the stuff about it was assumed that he was stuck on the island because he just got there. But we don't have any proof that he couldn't leave. I mean, there's also some reporting issues, like they asked who has that higher claim. If he can't leave the island or get fresh water, how could he have done a title search practically? So then I thought, okay, clearly he can leave because that's the assumption. I kind of got thrown off there a little bit.
What difference does it make whether he can leave?
Well, if he can leave, then he could go somewhere else and find fresh water. It wasn't the only source of fresh water. He just, in theory, go to another island, or the same way he went to go record title, he could go get other fresh water. And that one was kind of something going on in my head of, okay, is he really because it never explicitly said he was marooned there, and that was like in my mind, okay, well, if it wasn't explicitly said, then this might be one of those kind of gotcha moments of. And was that just looking too much into the background of it, or?
I think if he's doing it for 5 years straight without end, I think he was stuck there.
I mean, private island doesn't sound that bad. Fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Chance, if you wrote that, I don't think I could penalize you, but my recollection is that most people assumed he was stuck there. I mean, I suppose I could have. I think I said he was stranded in the second sentence. I said he was stranded there. I think that's a good clue. Yeah, go look at the second sentence. I said he was stranded. Okay. Blake, go ahead.
My challenge with getting to easement by necessity was twofold. One, I thought easements of necessity were primarily granted when some landowner was landlocked and did not have access to their land, not necessarily getting an easement by necessity to get to water for survivability. And then second, because I thought it was granted to an owner of a parcel of land, if Jack was just washed up on the shore, how could he actually gain an easement by necessity if he didn't actually have a parcel of land, which is why I kind of sidebarred it.
That's a good point. Yeah, good. That's such a good comment, Blake. So I think there are two things I can respond. First, you're right as a general matter, an easement by necessity is what you might call an easement appurtenant. That is, it's not for the benefit of one person. It's for the benefit of the owner of Blackacre, right? Prescriptive easements, on the other hand, are going to be easements in gross because they benefit one person regardless of the land. I don't know that the easement by necessity doctrine is absolutely limited to just crossing land if you're landlocked. I think in these cases the court could imply an easement to grant someone access to water. I think it could actually work like this. So it's not a perfect fit for what you studied. And Blake, if you wrote that the easement by necessity doctrine is limited to landlocking, I would give that full credit. I think it's the right answer. What I try to do with these exams is I take things you've learned and I twist them a little bit. And I try and see which way you cut on them. But yeah, I think you raise a fair point. Make sense? Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah, it's not a... I remember writing this and like, okay, Josh, how do I test easement by necessity without having a landlocked property, right? I was trying to find a different way of testing this concept without the exact same hypothetical you've used 100 times. And that's why I write these exams. It's a good thought. What else? All right, but if you just said that you cannot claim easement by necessity because it's not about landlocked, I think that's a fine answer. You at least recognize the limitations of the doctrine. Anything else on this part? Okay, let's move on then. All right, then the question gets a little bit more funky. Okay, screen share. Okay, so the next paragraph begins. By the way, if you notice, each paragraph corresponds to basically one or two questions. So the questions usually ordered sequentially, so you don't have to jump around too much. Okay, so the next paragraph says, in January 1705, Will washes ashore in Blackacre after another storm. Will immediately starts digging in the sand where Jack had initially found the gold chest and realizes the gold is missing. Okay, so that tells us that Will knew where the gold was and he had buried it there. Okay, now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. It says here that Will stole the gold in January of 1695. So there's a tacking issue buried in this question, no pun intended, right? There's a tacking issue buried in this question, right? Jack had stolen in 1695, and then he buried it for 5 years. And then Will had it in 1700, he buried it for 5 years. So in theory, collectively they had it for 10 years. Now, we know it's not open and notorious because it's hidden, right? So you can't claim the open and notorious element. But what about the continuous element, right? In order for Jack and Will to tack their 5 and 5 to get to 10, there has to be what's called privity, right? And these facts are very strange, and I wrote them in a very sort of weird manner to try and test your knowledge of the privity requirement. And it says, Will sees Jack and asks, "Where is my treasure chest?" Jack stays silent, and he kind of just shrugs his shoulders. I don't know, whatever, right? I don't know. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. Is that enough for privity? I think the answer is probably not. I don't think that cuts it. It's sort of just like the malfeasance, non-feasance line type. That's what I was trying to get at. And he's like, I don't know. So I don't think that'd be enough for privity. So they don't get to 10 years no matter what, under any circumstance. Okay, then Will says, oh yeah, I took it from Elizabeth in 1995, and they buried this and to keep it private. Anyway, by keeping it private, that means you don't start the limitation period anyway, because it's not open and notorious. Right? Now, Elizabeth, though, knew it was stolen. So under O'Keefe, maybe you do start the limitation period earlier. It's sort of this weird wrinkle. Where usually for open and notorious, is it visible? But if it's personal property and the person knew it was stolen, maybe you start the clock earlier. So the adverse possession question in number 1, you may have answered it just based on Jack himself, but you really need to work in the Jack plus Will for whether Jack acquired it, right? It's Jack had it for 5 years on his own. He can't claim it. Perhaps you need 10 years if you have Jack and Will because of the discovery rule. But they're not in privity, so you can't add the time together. So you see there are different ways of answering the question with different depth, right? You can go deeper into buried treasure, right? You keep going deeper and deeper and deeper how you want to answer it. Okay. Now, next question. So suspecting that Jack was lying, Will said, if you have the treasure, I will split it with you. Again, that was an effort to try to form privity. Will just shrugged his shoulders, and I don't know. So I don't think there's privity there. Then the next sentence says, Will said that Elizabeth was a record owner of Blackacre. And that she would eventually return to look for the treasure. She did exactly that. Now, we were talking earlier about acquiring some sort of easement by necessity to walk along the stream. Does Jack have a claim for adverse possession of Blackacre itself? Well, he's been on the land for 5 years, and he's doing it quite openly. There's no one hidden, there's no hiding it. He's on the land. He was only there 5 years, not 10 years. What about Jack? Will, can they tack their time together? Because he was on the land 5 years earlier. Again, I think they can't because of the lack of privity. They're not together. So I think Jack can't acquire Blackacre through adverse possession. All right, questions so far? Anything? All right, I'll go on. All right, the next paragraph says, in February 1706, so now we're 1 year later, Elizabeth rows ashore to Blackacre And by the way, this is a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. If you haven't seen it, the first one was good. Then they went downhill. I recently rewatched them. I got to the third one. I couldn't. It was just terrible. In February 1706, Elizabeth rows ashore to Blackacre and demands that Will return her treasure. Okay, so she knew it was stolen. But she got to Will more than 10 years after the treasure was stolen. So if we use this sort of discovery rule the discovery rule when you knew or should have known it was stolen from the O'Keefe case, then perhaps Will would have it. But he didn't have it all by himself because what's-his-face took it from him, Jack. But Jack's taking of it was also not open and notorious. So it's this weird system where no one knows where the treasure is. It's a very complicated fact pattern. I think on balance, neither of them had adverse possession of the gold. I think that's probably the better answer. But it gets messy. Then Will lies, says, I don't know where it is. And Jack continues to remain silent and does not acknowledge he found it. Okay, then we get to the fun stuff. It says, Elizabeth explains that the Blackacre Island is cursed by an evil spirit. Of course it is. And anyone who comes into ownership of the land will become sick. Now, the next sentence is, when she purchased Blackacre, she recorded a deed indicating that the spirit had superior interest over Blackacre, which is kind of a funny way of writing it. But this was a takeoff of the Stambovsky case, right? Where you had a house that was purportedly haunted. Now, was that a defect on the title? Or was that a defect on the physical property? Right? This word defect we've studied has different meanings in different contexts. Where you can have a defect like a cracked foundation, right? Or a latent defect like a leaky roof, for example. Right? Those are defects on the property. Right? But then you also have a defect on the title, where someone might have a superior interest, right? You know, when someone has a mortgage over your property, or maybe someone else owns it in fee simple. This is sort of an in-between question where I'm saying the house is haunted, but there's actually a legal interest. The spirit has an interest on Blackacre. It's kind of a fantasy, but why not? So you could talk about Stambovsky, but I think you should also talk about the case involving defects in title, right? Where someone else has superior interest. And I think there are different ways of addressing this question. It's kind of a trick because I said it both ways. I was like, it's cursed by a spirit, but also there's a a superior title. There's no indication if there was a general warranty deed or any sort of covenants there. Just it says nothing about it, so you can't presume there was a general warranty deed. It's like just don't make that assumption because it doesn't say it. But at minimum, you could say that there was a superior title. But now here we know that Jack has notice of it. Right? Jack buys Blackacre with actual notice of that superior title. So I think it's hard for them to complain about it later. Okay? Any questions so far? Yeah, Blake, go ahead.
So my question is kind of about this last sentence and how it leads into the next one. I got completely thrown. Jack purchases Blackacre. Did he just purchase that from Elizabeth now and then he's going to bid on it in the foreclosure again?
Let's see. All right.
Like, I did not know what.
When you buy Blackacre, you don't necessarily acquire the mortgage of Blackacre. Right? Just because you buy Blackacre. Oh, right. Okay, so let's just go through the facts here. Let me make this make a little bit more sense, right? Jack purchases Blackacre, right? But I don't think the sale closes quite yet. I think that's what I was getting at. Right? Then the bank goes into the foreclosure. And only then is Jack given the contract to sale. So I think what I was trying to get at there was Jack went to buy it after learning about it. But because the foreclosure process happened, that transaction could not be consummated. Does that make a little sense?
Kind of. I literally didn't know how to answer this at all because I read it as Jack purchases Blackacre as the transaction closed.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. You know what that... Yeah, okay. I could have done better.
I'm going to jump on that bandwagon and say I thought the same thing. I got very confused.
Okay, no, fair point. Okay, maybe I could have done that a little bit better. Chance?
Yeah, same deal, and then also it was just more along the. I missed out on the stranded part, so when they started going through all this stuff, I was thinking, okay, can you really cross-check title and all that? And if he's stranded, you know, how is he? Then there's also the. So he paid 100 gold for it. Does that mean it was his 100 gold, or I was 100 gold from the thing? And that's where I started losing all hope.
Was it? Ye who enter abandon all hope.
Yeah.
Okay, fair point. Okay, I could have made that clear. I'm sorry. I could have made that clear. I think what I was getting at there. Yeah, I think I didn't make that clear enough. Was that he went to go purchase it, but the deal was not fully consummated. It wasn't completed. Would that make more sense? Yeah. Okay. My mistake. But thank you for that. I do appreciate that. Whenever I grade these, I often recognize that I didn't phrase things as clear as I could. I think this is one of the instances, so I apologize. All right. So the next paragraph begins. She fell behind in her mortgage payments for Blackacre, and there were 2 mortgages in the property. There was a first mortgage for the Caribbean Bank, and she owed 100 coins. And there's a second mortgage on the Atlantic Bank. The second mortgage to the Atlantic Bank with 50 coins. This question was getting at the concept of priority. We study what happens when there's multiple mortgages on a piece of property, that the first bank uses priority and gets to collect first if there's a foreclosure sale, and the second bank collects second. Okay, so it said there's a foreclosure sale was announced and properly advertised. That's important because of cases like Murphy versus FinDev Corp, where if there's not adequate advertisements and they don't take proper notice, then the foreclosure sale itself is void. Okay, then we learned at the sale only one bid was placed. Jack bids 100 gold coins, which was the same amount he found in the chest. I think Chance asked, were those the coins that he got from the chest? I did not say. Maybe yes, maybe no. The reason why that matters, or the reason why that could matter, and what I was trying to get at is, if Jack used the 100 coins that weren't his, those coins actually belonged to Elizabeth. So basically, Elizabeth would have paid off her own foreclosure sale. I was trying to hint at that. I don't think anyone actually figured that, and it was maybe a little bit too difficult, but I think that's what I was trying to get at, right? If, let's say the adverse possession claim fails, those 100 coins were actually Elizabeth's coins. So basically, her own foreclosure sale was paid by her own... She had basically paid her own debt then. Not exactly. It's kind of a weird analogy. But I don't think anyone got that, so it probably was a little too obtuse. Yeah, Anthony.
I put that referencing almost what you said, that the sale may not have even happened if Elizabeth had those coins initially, and that we didn't know for sure that wasn't the reason why she had to have the sale, because Jack got the coins.
Oh, so you're saying she would not have fallen behind on her mortgage if she had her gold?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I mean, that's not exactly what I was thinking of. That's a good answer. That's creative. All right, then the next sentence says, Jack is given a contract of sale from the bank, which does not disclose the curse. Why is that relevant? Well, he had notice on his own, actual notice. So whether or not he had record notice, I think is not very relevant. Because we learned later that says he took ownership, became sick. All right, and we know he tried to rescind the contract of sale. Because he had actual notice of the spirit from what's-her-face, Elizabeth, I don't think that works. All right, questions so far? Yeah, Naveen?
So should we have not even addressed record notice? Do you think it's just a waste of time, or?
You can talk about it. You can say, well, there was no record notice, but there was actual notice, which is usually the opposite. Usually you have record notice, but not actual notice. Here you have actual notice, but not record notice. So I think you can address that.
Oh, well, I addressed that they had actual notice, but I also said even if Jack didn't have actual notice, he would have had record notice too.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you think that's
no, not waste of time at all. That's correct. Jenny, go ahead.
Just with regard to that last sentence, isn't it true that foreclosure sales don't generally require disclosures?
No, that's right. And it's generally basically what's called a quitclaim deed. You're taking it as is, so it wouldn't even be relevant. So it really is irrelevant whether the deed from the foreclosure sale has any sort of disclosures on it. Yeah, good point. All right. Questions on this one? All right. I want to walk you through now the A+ answer for a few minutes in our remaining 20 minutes left. I'm going to warn you that this is not a perfect answer. Every year, whenever I review the A+ answer, we're like, that's not right and that's wrong. It's true, right? Was it lest ye not be judged? Whatever the expressions, right? It's very hard to write a perfect paper. So even the A+ paper has stuff that's wrong with it. I very rarely give 100. It's never happened I've given 100. I've given in the mid-90s occasionally if it's a really good paper. Usually on a midterm that's in the low 90s for the A+, sometimes in the high 80s. So it's not perfect. All right, so let's just walk through the questions from this student. This person, if they took me in fall 2017, they've graduated. They're well on their way to actually, we've just taken the bar, I think. They're well on their way. Okay, so the first question is adverse possession. Jack satisfied the entry element by taking the chest and burying it across the island. Good, but it's not open and notorious because he hid it in the underground. Very good. Correct. It was not continuous for the minimum of 10 years, but instead it was only 6. I forgot to mention the state of mind, but Jack would have the aggressive trespasser standard, which is correct. Even if the claim fails, I think you should still walk through each of the 4 elements separately to show, just so you know that you're working through. Don't say, oh, it doesn't meet 10 years, therefore it fails. So actually walk through each of the 4 elements. I think that's a helpful thing to do. Okay? All right, question continues. Does Will acquire it? No, he does not meet the time limits. Also, he had the same open notorious issue. Good. The student writes about the discovery rule. Right? When did she know it was missing? The facts are a little bit ambiguous on this front. Right? Because it says Will stole it, but it's not really clear when Elizabeth realized it was stolen. Perhaps she only realized it was stolen fairly recently. Okay? So I think we've hit most of the issues on the adverse possession issue for number 1. Any questions on number 1? No? All right, let's try number 2. This is the water issue. This is the accessing of the stream. This student discussed the easement by necessity, which is what I was getting at. because it's the only source of water. I thought it was pretty obvious he was marooned, but I guess, Chance, you're right. The fact that people came there later means he wasn't so trapped. It's hard to write these exam questions that are perfect and just trying to conceive of every wrinkle, but I think you raise a fair point. Okay, so then the students talking at Matthews versus Bayhead, which I think is good, right? Because generally you have access to the shoreline, and he can see the shoreline without, trespassing. That's where he was camping there. But if you think about it, he can only stay in the shoreline. He has to get to the water. So I think the court would create an easement by necessity to get from the shoreline to the stream. Just to stay in the dry sand, though, not so much, but just to go there and get the water. I think you could limit the easement by necessity just to get the water. Okay. Questions on that one? Excuse me. All right, number 3. That's a foreclosure sale. Oh, Mackenzie, go ahead, please.
Does the public trust doctrine not cover the access to the stream as well?
The public trust doctrine is for the ocean. There's a difference between the ocean and a stream. I know that sounds stupid, but they're actually very different, right? The ocean is for navigation. It's it leads to the seas of the world, versus a lake or a stream on your property can be completely self-contained. Now, eventually, most streams will find their way to an ocean, right? But there's no public trust doctrine to access a stream. It's for the ocean. That's generally why the public trust doctrine matters in coastal places like Texas and New Jersey or California. It's not going to be in the middle of the country. You don't really have public trust in that regard. I don't know if public trust is like on the Great Lakes, for example. I'm not sure, actually. I've not looked into that. But generally, a stream will not have. You can't start sunbathing next to a creek in someone's house. That's just not going to work. Chance?
I was going to say the same thing, but in regards to a river. I mean, how far up the Mississippi can you go before?
I don't think. Because the Mississippi travels through the entire country. I don't think you have public trust doctrine either side. I think you have private property in that regard.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, the water itself might be open to public use, but I don't think the sand. And there's not really sand around a creek either, if you think about it, right? It doesn't have the same sort of barrier. It's just sort of just soil, whatever. Okay. All right. Blake, is your hand up now? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to comment kind of on the river thing, because like here in Florida, or Texas, excuse me, you can go float the rivers and you can float past private property, but to get into those rivers, you either have to pay somebody a fee to use their private land or find a public access area. So
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, you go tubing, whatever people do in Texas, right? Okay. Anything else, number 2? I'll take a look at number 3, please. About 10 minutes left. Student made a mistake here. This is not correct. It said the student wrote that Elizabeth owes 100 coins to the first mortgagor. That's actually not correct. It's the mortgagee, right? The mortgagor is the person who borrows the money. I can't say the word, the borrower. And the bank is the mortgagee. So the student here flipped it, right? Remember, the mortgagor gives the mortgage to the mortgagee, right? The borrower gives the mortgage to the bank. So the student got this one. The terminology they screwed up. Okay, then they first priority, good. That was the exact amount paid for. The student wrote that the bank number 2 can get a deficiency judgment, which is feasible, but those are not favored. The bank used good faith and diligence to advertise it was likely a fair price. He sold the owner even if he didn't record. Okay, good. I think it was more straightforward. Anything else, number 3? Excuse me. All right, let's take a look at number 4. Student wrote, student suit against the bank alleging would fail because Jack had notice. He knew it was cursed. Right? Elizabeth explained it to him. That gives him actual notice. A title with defects is still a marketable title, right? I mean, that's an issue we had several cases on, but I think this is probably. I think given that he had notice, I think he can't complain about it. Okay. Talked about Stambovsky. I mean, it wasn't exactly right because it's not the same type of defect in Stambovsky. I think that case is relevant. Right. What I'd like to see a little bit more is discussing defect on title versus defect on property. Which exactly was the spirit? I think it was actually both in this case. Okay. Question number 4. Yeah, Jenny, go ahead.
Maybe I just wasn't playing along with the narrative well enough, but I had no clue how to address a spirit's interest in property. So I kind of just glazed over that.
Well, I said you didn't have to know too much about the narrative, but I said, I'm highlighting the sentence. When Elizabeth purchased Blackacre, she recorded a deed indicating the spirit had superior interest over Blackacre. So, I mean, I told you right there, he has superior interest. That doesn't require anything supernatural, just, it was right there in the question.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I try to make the questions a little bit, different, but I think I gave you the facts you needed for that one. But fair point. Yeah, it's always tricky when you have any fact pattern because if it's something, that's not conventional, people don't like it. I don't remember what my Property 1 exam was for you, but I've had in the past, people dying and coming back to life, and ghosts and things like that, time machines, because it makes Property 1 more fun. Okay, someone wrote in the chat, are entities non-human and non-corporations capable of owning interest in property? Nick asked, I think so. At least here they can. All right, let's look at number 5, which was a policy question. All right. The law should recognize the claim of an adverse possessor from a policy perspective because society, we want property rights clarified in a reasonable amount of time. You also want to put property to its highest and best use. Okay, so you want certainty and clarity and also efficiency, property being used well. Okay. It'll be more efficient to let Jack adversely possess the property and then spend it on something useful, that's the coins, rather than allow Elizabeth to continue not using it efficiently, have it buried underground. I don't know about that, right? If the property was returned to Elizabeth, she would use it, maybe to pay her mortgage. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but I get the gist. Neither of them did it open notoriously. Yeah, not great. I want more policy. I don't want a repeat of number 1. This issue goes to fairness. Yeah, not crazy about this answer. I know. In a normal world, this would be a B. By the midterm, it's an A+. That just gives you kind of a sense of where people are. The exams are generally not strong by the midterm. They get better later in the semester. But there's some useful stuff in there. Okie doke. Questions on the midterm? Questions in the midterm. I hate this stupid thing. Whenever I ignore my phone, it goes to my computer. Anything in your minds?
First of all, I have a question.
Who's speaking?
Alan.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
So, just as far as referencing a case that we've gone over in class, how important is that, and how many points do we get extra points or something like that if we do that? Or
yes,
say like for average possession, we lay out all the elements and we address them accordingly, and we don't address the OQ case. Will we still get the same amount of points as someone who did the same thing, or? Yeah,
cases are important. Again, I'm not crazy about this A+ answer because they didn't do that. But if there's, Alan, let me ask your question this way. Usually when I write an exam, what I do is I take a fact pattern from a case you've read and I sort of twist it around. And what I really like to see is if you recognize what case I'm talking about, how I've twisted it. that pushes, maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10 to a 9 or a 10 out of 10, right? That sort of elevates it to the maximum credit. So the short answer is yes. I'd like to see more cases discussed. Mandy asked, "Are you going to a midterm?" I wasn't planning on it. I think this 90-minute session is far more helpful than a memo for you. So this was my thing. Hopefully you were taking notes, but I wasn't planning on it. All right, thanks, Alan. Other questions? Going once. Going twice? Yeah, Marissa, go ahead, please.
Do you know if the school is planning on having maybe in-person finals, or it's just...
I think it's unlikely, Marissa. I'm sorry. Definitely not this semester. What the school may let you do is take your final in the building, but in like your own cubicle, right?
Will we have access to a printed exam?
I know what you're asking. I think the answer is going to be no. I'm sorry. I really do. What the school did for the bar takers this past semester was they had basically every office in the building was converted to a bar room and let people just take them. But they didn't have paper. They had just online. The difficulty is with paper is it gives some students an advantage. That is, those who come to the building have an advantage over those who can't come to the building for whatever reason, which is why I think they can't do it. I get it. I'll ask. I mean, I think the answer is no, but I'll try to find out. I'm pretty sure the answer is no. I'll ask.
I'm making a big deal, but ever since I had LASIK, my eyes are very sore with computers. So, the more time I spend reading and doing stuff.
Send me an email, and then I'll remind me to ask about it later. Okay. Thank you. Okie doke. Anything else, guys? We're just about out of time. I want to just give you a little preview for class on Wednesday. We're going to resume our discussion of covenants, which we did not finish, which is fine. I'd like you to go back and review the first 3 pages of a reading from last class, which were pages. Let me just make sure I give you the right numbers. It was It was 835 to 838. Go back and review those 3 pages, please. And also in the class notes section, I have a folder for the summaries. Pull up the lecture on covenants and easements, and just go through that very carefully. I think that'll help you review this topic because it's not easy. So for tomorrow, we have the basics. It was 835 to 838. We're going to do one case, Tulk versus Moxie, which was 838 to 843. And a case, Neponsit versus Immigrant Bank, which is 843 to 852. So it's not a terribly large number of pages, but just at least be prepared for that for tomorrow. Okay? Anything else? All right, I will see you all on Wednesday. And if you want office hours, I should be around maybe 12:30 or 12:40 today after my other class finishes. Thank you.